Now this screencast is going to help you with part 3 of the review on universal gravitation. Remember that we covered universal gravitation right after centripetal force. And so there weren't a whole lot of notes on there. We didn't have a PowerPoint on it. The only things that you're truly going to get straight from your notes are numbers 1 and 2. And then we've got a lot of rules of ones. Remember, we've done a lot of these with universal gravitation. I'm actually going to go ahead and go on to the last page and work one of these rule of ones for you and let you go back and work some of the others. The one thing that I continually see students struggle on is using that fraction squared in the bottom. And so I am going to do question F, which we had a bell ringer on, but it's got that fraction in the denominator, and so I want to show you guys how to do that in the fraction style. If you want to plug it into your calculator, you can do that as well, but I'm going to work it out the fraction way. So the first thing I want to do is write down my equation. The force of gravity equals big G. On some people's quizzes, I saw this mistaken for little g. Remember that they are completely different things. Little g is a measure of acceleration. Big G is a measure of a whole different sort. It's a constant throughout the universe. 9.8 only applies to Earth. So Fg equals big G times m1, m2, all divided by d squared. And some students are struggling with the rule of ones, but it's really just like doing any other math problem, with the exception of if they don't tell you the number, it's 1. So, for example, in letter F, the distance is reduced to half. Well, that means d equals 1/2. You can think of it as being d equals half of a meter. And if you want to do this with your calculator, you can just go ahead and convert that, and it's 0.5. And you can work the whole thing out that way. Again, I'm going to keep it fraction form because that means I don't have to pull my calculator out for these types of questions. But if my distance is half, that means that my mass is 1 and my other mass is 1. For the rule of ones, I would even put in a 1 for the letter G. But I prefer to think of it as, because it's constant, it can never ever change, and so we're just going to ignore it. That way we don't have to worry about big G, because really you should remember that G is always 6.67 times 10 to the negative 10th. Remember, I'm writing that E button instead of times 10 simply because I want you guys to remember that you need to hit that EE button instead of hitting times or 10 or the caret. None of it. Just hit the exponent button. Okay, so again, I'm going to work this out fraction style. So I look over here and I'm going to drop that G. My M1 is going to be a 1. My M2 is also a 1. Remember, they did not change. All of that divided by D, but I need to square it. I'm going to write out the steps. I'm going to look at the top, and I can easily multiply 1 times 1. The bottom is not quite as easy. 1/2 squared, we're multiplying 1/2 times 1/2. When we do that, we get 1/4. So now we've gotten to 1 divided by 1/4. Again, if you plugged that into your calculator, you would at this point get 0.25. And you could do 1 divided by 0.25. I'm going to do the fraction method. In order to divide by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal, which means we multiply by the fraction flipped over. When I do this, it's really easy to see. I'm just multiplying 1 times 4 over 1. My answer is 4. So my answer for F is 4F. Okay, now I'm going to go down the page and start working the practice problems. Again, the best way for you to learn is to pause it, and then after you've worked the problem, or once you get stuck, then unpause, see what my steps were, see what you matched and what you missed. Pause again and continue working on your own. Watching me work the problem without you working the problem will not help you on the test. This is designed to aid you if you get stuck doing the review. So in number 4, I'm going to read through the question. I'm looking for a gravitational force, and I have two objects 5 meters apart. The mass of one is 12 kilograms, and the other is 35 kilograms. Okay, for this I use my basic equation, Fg equals big G, m1, m2 divided by d squared. I want to write out all my variables that I'm given over here. First thing they gave me was 5 meters. Meters is a distance. Then they give me 12 kilograms and 35 kilograms. Because we are multiplying them, it does not matter which one we call M1 and M2. I just tend to use the same order that they give me. I'm looking, in this case, for Fg, and I always know my big G, 6.67 times 10 to the negative 11th, and that will be on your equation sheet. Okay, so if I look at all of these, I plug them in. So I'm going to start with my 6.67, hit that EE button to the negative 11th. That's my big G. Now times M1, 12, times M2, 35. All of that is going to be divided by by D squared. D is 5 meters, that's what I was looking at, squared. Okay, now again, first thing that I really like to do is go ahead and square my denominator, because I have one of these little dinky calculators, old school version, and so I don't like to have to hit my parentheses button since I can't see if I misentered something. And so I'm just going to go ahead and write out that bottom portion, which is 25. Now I can keep everything in my calculator. So again, 6.67, all I need to do is hit this exponent button, nothing else. Now I hit my negative 11, and you can see it entered right there. There's a little bit of a shadow on it. There you go, 6.67, negative 11. I should not see any times, any tens, any carets, nothing. I multiply that by 12 and then by 35. And I get an answer in the top of 2.8 times 10 to the negative 8. Okay, if your calculator does this, you have to count how many decimal places. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I'm actually not going to take it out of my calculator though, because I'll get an answer much closer to those of you with scientific calculators. We're not going to worry about any of our significant figures here. So I'm just going to hit divided by, and I already wrote down, we're going to divide by 25. Okay, again, your calculators are probably going to give you a different answer, because if they've got a little bit more precision to them, you're going to see more numbers. But all that I can get from my calculator is 1 times 10 to the negative 9th. Now don't stop there, because I'm missing a unit. I go and I look. I was solving for Fg. Doesn't matter what kind of F you're looking for, the unit is always newtons. Circle my answer, and I'm ready to move on. Okay, in this next problem, we're going to be solving for a distance. This can be a lot more tricky. So again, I want to start the same way I always start, reading my question and circling or highlighting what I am given. Now I know something is up right away because I've only highlighted 2 numbers, and I know that I've got 5 different variables. I always know G. I'm always solving for one thing, so I'm missing something. So I have to read carefully. Well, it tells me that they are 2 identical objects. And so I know that both masses, 1 and 2, are 3 kilograms. The other information it gives me is the gravitational force. Not only does it say gravitational force, I see that N right there. So I know that this is my Fg value, and I'm going to write out 1.2, that exponent button, -9. Remember that big G, we always know. And this time, we're solving for distance. Okay, I'm going to rewrite that equation before I do anything. Again, you guys can do this in a different way. And if you're going to, then go ahead and pause, work the problem, fast forward, and see if you end up with the same answer that I get. What I'm going to do first, though, is I'm going to rewrite this equation to get d squared all alone. To do this, I need to multiply both sides by d squared. Okay, so now I end up with d squared times Fg equals G times M1 times M2. Well, again, I really want D all alone. To get D alone, I divide by Fg. This will drop out, and now I've got that side of my equation. D squared equals G M1 M2 divided by Fg. If I wanted to at this point, I could even rewrite it so I can take the square root. And that might be a good idea because a lot of you on the quiz forgot to take the square root. So once I do that, that square root drops out, and now I've got a nice rewritten equation solving for D. Again, if this isn't something that you follow, just keep with our original equation, plug in, but you'll be rewriting later. And that is just fine, but I like to be able to plug everything in straight away. So I'm going to write out my substitutions. Made a little boo-boo there. 6.67 times 10 to the negative 11th. M1 is 3, M2 is 3. And that's all going to be divided by Fg, which is 1.2. Remember, you go back over here to find everything to plug in. 1.2 times 10 to the negative 9th. Okay. Again, I like to write out all of my steps all the way through. Nothing on the bottom is going to change, but I do want to write out what that top number multiplies to be. So I'm going to plug in 6.67 to the negative 9th. Oop, see what I'm doing? I'm making a mistake. 6.67 times 10 to the negative 11th multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3 again. So I get 6.003 times 10 to the negative 10th. Okay, I've written it down just in case I misenter or miskey something. I don't have to go back and rework the whole thing, but I'm right here. I can divide.
Lauren Barnett.
So I can simply divide by 1.2 times 10 to the negative 9th. I end up with an answer of D equals, oh, and I was about to make another mistake. Remember, I still have that square root sign all around this. Okay, that's why this is helpful, so you've already got it written down there. Otherwise, you might think, oh, looks like a good number, I'm done. I'm not done. I have to take the square root, and so I end up with an answer of 0.71 meters. And that looks much better. Okay, this screencast is almost out of time, so I'm going to work the next problem, show the answer, and let you guys figure that one out. First thing I've done is to rewrite my equation for M2. Now I'll substitute. My next step is to simplify. Make sure you're still with me. And there's my final answer.